love Beacon Hill. When I first came here for college, I lived on Beacon Hill for a while, and I just immediately felt at home there. The whole Beacon Ave used to have, I don't know, at least like 10 Filipino businesses when I first moved here. It definitely no longer has that, but when I first moved here, I was like, oh shit, like I'm home, you know?
Well, Beacon Hill is fantastic. It's like a little village within its own self, very cosmopolitan, lots of languages. We have 70% people of color. How we got here is that basically you have to look at a couple things. What's happening within the United States, wherein we had the racist redlining that was basically mapping out Seattle and saying, these are the areas that are pristine. Blacks and people of color cannot buy here. These are the areas that are dangerous or underdeveloping, so people of color can buy there. This really impacted the ability of families of color to build wealth. They were able to buy property, but in areas that did not increase the property values as much as other areas in the city. So you've got that as an internal policy, and then you have what's happening externally. For workers, Chinese were brought over, Japanese Americans, Filipinos, and then you have the Vietnam War. So we had Vietnamese, Laotians, Cambodians as refugees. And then you also have the civil wars, Central and South America and in Africa. So we have a large Somali population. We are a multilingual community that embraces, this is our community. These are the people we love.
I have seen the changes in Beacon Hill over the last 15 years. It really actually is quite shocking, right?
We were identified as the most displaced neighborhood within the city of Seattle last year. So we have the Beacon Hill light rail station, and so on that north part of Beacon Hill, an urban village is being created so that there's more density, and Mandatory Housing Affordability Act has allowed developers to build higher and taller in trade for contributing some money for affordable housing. What that has done is it pulled a lot of professionals into that north area, frankly, and what it did is it resulted in displacement.
Gentrification and displacement has deeply impacted the sustainability of queer spaces because it's not affordable to be in neighborhoods that are historically queer, right? Like, what neighborhood is there left for the weirdos of the world?
Unfortunately, developers, when they're looking for, places to start their gentrification projects, they're gonna go where it's affordable, where there's art and there's nightlife and there's culture, and that ends up being something that queer people facilitate and then kind of get priced out of.
As a queer adult, I feel like my housing has been precarious usually, and that's just a result of me being Black and queer and non-binary and working class, experiencing eviction, experiencing couch surfing. It feels like a part of the Black, trans, and queer experience.
In 2015 and for several years before that, we were witnessing a lot of our friends and people who we're in community with lose their housing. We would let folks crash with us. We'd try to kind of use our housing as a community resource, and that was really unsustainable.
It was really impacting our relationships. It was really impacting the movement to have people, be like, I can't be involved because I need to make sure that I can put food on the table,
What was happening wasn't just our friends dealing with housing, it was like queer and trans people in Seattle dealing with unsustainable housing. And so Queer the Land was the solution that we came up with.
From the beginning, we've been putting together different disaster preparedness kits and getting groceries to people, granting money for housing emergencies. The pandemic really confirmed that our vision for being really rooted in mutual aid, it confirmed how important that is. We've been about cooperation, about how do we take care of each other when the government, fails us.
We always had a vision of purchasing a home that had both living space and community space. There are already a number of queer houses, where queer folks come together, 4 to maybe sometimes 9 people come together, find a house, and they might rent that house out for years and just kind of have a revolving door of queer folks in it. But, at least the queer houses in Seattle were all owned by people who were either not queer or who were really just doing it for a profit. So we knew that the idea of like a queer house is something that we know it works. Like we know what that looks like. And that's what we want, but we want to own it so that we don't get into a situation that some folks had gotten into where we've been renting this house for years and now the landlord wants to sell it. And now, 5, 6 people are out of a home.
In 2014, Juan Anderson Young was murdered. And he was a queer Black man in Seattle. And he was murdered by someone he met on a dating app. And that was really scary for me. And I know it was scary for M.A. Josiane. And it was scary for people in our community. We knew that we needed a dedicated space for Black and brown, trans, and queer people in the Seattle area. That's what we knew we needed. And that's what it didn't exist.
Purchasing a home in some way has always been a goal of Queer the Land because of the idea of, having a protected relationship to land and the idea that we want a home to grow old together in.
QTL got the funds for the house by grant writing, and then also our membership structures that we give at least an hour of our time or $20 per month. We did a grant with the city called the EDI, so the Equitable Development Initiative.
It took a long time, all in all, about 5 years for us to actually get into the house.
So I actually got to meet someone who was born in that house, and she let me know that it was one of those tenement type boarding houses. And then it became a house in the 70s and 90s that was for Emma Goldman finishing school. The owner, she had to sell the house at a reduced rate. She wasn't taking care of the house, the residents. There was a lawsuit. It became a 4-year legal battle with the folks who live there.
I think because of just how it went down historically, there was a lot of concerns about Queer the Land and how it'd be able to sustain such a house. And so we were required to find a land trust to be a part of, which actually we love the idea of a land trust. I think it's difficult in Seattle is there's not a lot of land trusts that are in control of Black and brown folks. And so, it just, everything was a negotiation.
We put a lot of things on hold for ourselves, like jobs and just vacations, sleep, all during COVID, all during the height of COVID. So you can imagine how exhausted we were.
When Queer the Land did purchase the house, it was like a ray of hope.
The house was the goal first, and now we're able to just generate so much from it. So it means a lot. A space to shower, a space to be, but, centered around our community, which I feel doesn't actually happen. We have self-defense, we have disaster preparedness, we have a huge gardening program. We're able to start doing community visioning and getting the things that folks want. Never would have thought that we wanted to get a dog wash because a lot of people in our community have dogs. And we just got a new fence. We have an apothecary. We have a pantry for folks to get the food that they want. Right now, we're just working towards the permitting phase. This house was made in 1904. So it's not a house that is, fully functional. One thing that we did was we hired a community organization called Play They that helps with accessibility. We got to walk around with them and our contractor. So all the doors have to be widened. We have to take out certain things. We have to take out certain stairs.
I got to see where the Housing Committee for Queer the Land is planning to put an elevator lift, and that's really important. You know, Seattle is not very accessible.
You know, in the future, we'll have, I'd say, about 6 to 7 bedrooms that will be what we consider affordable, not what, you know, the city of Seattle deems affordable. QTL's idea of what transitional housing is like 2 to 3 years and not like 90 days or a year or even 2 years. You need like a lot of time to just like get out of a mindset, get out of your body with all the physical things that come along with experiencing issues with housing. It just takes a lot. And a lot of us, if not the majority of us in QTL, have just experienced housing instability and homelessness and just not wanting to go back there. So that's kind of the space that we want to cultivate. So when people leave, they leave better.
What gives me hope about the future of Beacon Hill is the people, the activists, the neighbors who care about each other, the folks who are willing to step up.
I'm always thinking, what's like the next, you know, bold solution that we can think about? Because maybe we are time travelers and, you know, that solution just seems bold because the world hasn't gotten there yet, but it's still worth, you know, moving towards. And so I always think about that. You know, how can I turn my anger into hope? How can I envision something that is transformative?
Most people don't know, how do collectives work? How do cooperatives work? How do community land trusts work?
What if Queer the Land establishes a model for what it's like to start cooperative queer houses, you know, in neighborhoods? That would just be so rad.
LGBTQIA plus history hasn't been recorded. It's been rarely recorded, rarely documented. It's a big deal that there will be this house in Beacon Hill, this historical people of color neighborhood. It's a big deal that will hopefully be in that community forever, and it will always be owned by Black and brown LGBTQIA plus people. I mean, you can't deny that we were here.
Leaves and stems and flower and root, many parts make one whole, me and you. And flower and root make one whole, me and you, and it grows cold. Yeah, we're still here, and it grows cold. Yeah, we're still here. We are the spring, and they can't stop us. They can stop us. They can stop us. We are the spring, and they can't stop us.